Thanks for joining tonight. My name is Megan Williams. I'm the I am the Emerging Professionals and Student Manager of the Tennessee Society of CPAs. So I'm happy to be here with you guys tonight and don't want to take up too much time from our speakers and our experts on the CPA exam process. But if you are not a member of TSCPA, I encourage you to join and look at the resources and benefits that we have out there for you as you're preparing for the exam and on your journey to becoming a CPA. Just know that we are here to support you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our speakers. We have Wendy Garvin, the Executive Director from the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. And we have Karen Turner and Allison Duthie from NASBA, who are going to talk about the exam process, CPA evolution, and answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Megan. I think I'm going to kick off and do a few slides, and then I will turn it over to the experts at NASBA to help us out a bit. Basically, today we're going to talk about everything CPA exam related. And so we'll start out with basically the licensing requirements in Tennessee, as well the requirements to sit for the exam, as well as to be licensed in Tennessee. Then we'll move into applying to sit for the exam. We'll talk a little bit about the structure and content on the exam. We will talk about CPA evolution, which everybody's probably interested in hearing about, in the transition to the new exam in 2024. And then we'll talk a little bit about the exam strategy and some resources for you all as you get ready for that. All right, Megan, for some reason, oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so it takes a lot to administer the exam and make sure everything is running smoothly. And so I know it can get confusing for candidates quite often, but this screen is kind of giving you a sense of all of the folks involved in the process. And so CPAs are licensed by states, basically, or jurisdictions. So there's 55 jurisdictions across the country and in some of the U.S. territories. And so those are the boards of accountancy. Obviously, Tennessee is one of them. The AICPA, they write and score the CPA exam. And so content is created at the AICPA through the Board of Examiners. And then the scores are determined by AICPA as well. And NASBA is the group that you're going to start with. They are the individuals that review your education and determine you eligible to sit for the exam, and then ultimately determine that your education meets the requirements for licensure as well. And then Prometric is where you take the exam. So once you've been approved to sit for the exam, you will schedule your exam sections at a Prometric testing center in various locations throughout the state. And at the end of each of these sections, I'll kind of stop and give you an opportunity to ask questions, and we can do that in the chat. Megan can help me keep up with that. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements in Tennessee specifically. We typically talk about the 3 E's as being requirements to sit for or to become licensed in Tennessee. So you have an education requirement, you have an exam requirement, and you have an experience requirement. In Tennessee and many other jurisdictions, you also have an ethics requirement. And so once you've completed the big ones, we have the AICPA ethics exam as part of the requirements as well. Now, it doesn't have to be done the ethics exam can be done before you complete the other items, but it is a requirement for licensure in Tennessee. Okay, so first we're going to talk about sitting for the CPA exam and how you become qualified to sit. So they are a little different than licensure. So in order to sit for the exam, you must have completed a 4-year bachelor's degree from an accredited institution. So it doesn't need to be an accounting degree specifically, but you do need a bachelor's degree, and it needs to be conferred from an accredited institution. And then you also need to have completed at least 18 semester hours of accounting education at the upper division level. And we define that as junior or senior level courses. So typically your 300 or 400 level courses. Of course, they could be graduate courses as well, but you need at least 18 semester hours, and internship hours do not count towards that 18 hours. So also, point of clarification, you can submit an application to sit for the exam while your education is still underway. Typically, people would do that in their last semester of obtaining that. So you're at least enrolled in the courses, you just don't have your grades yet, but you can submit the application as well as what you're enrolled in. And you can be approved, but you have to complete that education, and the degree has to be conferred before you go in and sit for a section, or those scores would be invalidated. So you certainly don't want to do that. Okay, and now we'll move on to the education requirements for licensure. And so this is where a lot of people get confused. So they end up, after they complete their bachelor's degree, they get excited and they get those 18 hours approved and they go sit for the exam. And then typically during that time, you do complete your education, but we don't know that at the board, and neither does NASPA. So then when you're done with the CPA exam, you need to make sure that all of your education is complete and that NASPA has verified that. So the ultimate requirements for licensure are, of course, the bachelor's degree, which we already talked about. And then you also need a total of 30 semester hours in accounting, with 24 of those being up at the upper division level. And then a maximum of 6 semester hours in internship programs can be included in really all of the 150 at this point. And so if you remember from the previous slide, we had 18 semester hours in upper division accounting to sit, but you need 30 total accounting hours to be licensed. So there is a little bit of a difference there. So at least in addition, on a licensure standpoint, you need 24 semester hours in general business for licensing. And those areas are noted there on the screen. They are also located in our rules and on our website. So that's another resource for you to kind of go back to if you need some information on the business requirement. And typically we don't see people having problems meeting the business hour requirement. Okay, so before we jump into kind of exam specific and application, does anybody have any questions about just the requirements to sit and the requirements for licensure? Do you see anything, Megan?
I don't see anything in the chat. If you guys.
Okay.
Yep, I'll keep watching. So just pop your questions in there if you think of anything.
Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over to Karen to kind of talk about the application process, or Allison, whichever one of you wants to take over.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Turner. I am with NASPA. I'm the team lead for our Client Services Department. So I'll be going over the next couple slides for the application process. And one second. So it'll be the next slide. Can someone change it for me? Thank you. So this is our new NASPA dashboard. Candidates will come in and you will have to register for an Okta account. The links to this is on our website, nasba.org. But once you create your account, you're going to go under the CPA portal, and that's where you're going to see your evaluation application that you will then have to complete in order for us to begin your reviews. So you would click on CPA portal, and then you'll be brought in to the application page. You can click apply now at the top in the black section, or down here at the bottom it says evaluation status. It'll also have, apply now here if you have not yet started your application. The status is also going to be reflected on that page. So if you have any questions, once you apply, you'll be able to see it there. This next page is our introduction page. We do require everyone to read through and make sure that you understand that the policies, and it also gives a little information on the official transcripts that you have to submit. All transcripts must be official and they have to be sent in through the registrar's office directly to NASPA. If you have a certificate of enrollment, then you can send that in yourself. Versus up here, there's a section that says supporting documents. You'll be able to upload it there. But other than that, everything else is just official transcripts that we require, and the notary form, I'm sorry, you can do that also on supporting documents. But everything else would just be the transcripts, and you can have the school send that into NASBA directly. So once you go through the introduction, you can click the next step. And here, you're just going to read through the attestations, make sure that you completely understand all of that. Just hit the check at the bottom, and you would just continue with the application. The next step would be the candidate information. This is what we're going to provide. Well, this is the information that we're going to have to be able to contact you. The name that's on here has to match the names on the transcripts. That way we can match it to your application. But you're just going to keep going through the application steps. The next one is the education. As I mentioned before, transcripts are to be submitted directly from the institution to NASBA for us to process and add them to your application. But here you would just select each school. You can add them just one time. If you went to the school for multiple degrees, you can add just your highest earned degree. If you haven't earned a degree, just still, you can leave that blank. But once you click on the university section for the name, as soon as you start typing the school's name, it'll auto-populate to give you the school list that we have. You would just select from one of those. And then if you have more than one, you just click add school. Your next step would be your education evaluation and application questions. Some of these are just yes, no. Well, I'm sorry, all of these are yes, no. You're acknowledging that all of your transcripts are coming from the institution, and it gives you the information as to the address where you can have it mailed to, or the email address for your school to send those in. Next, you'll be at the payment page. There is the refund policies down at the below. It does let you know that there are no refunds, and your fees cannot be transferred over to another application. This first page is only for your evaluation. So it is a $90 fee for the Tennessee evaluation application. And once you submit that, you can apply to other states if you need to, but this is only for Tennessee. So once you hit apply now, your application is final. We will complete that review for the Tennessee education requirements for you. Next would be our international evaluation services. So for Tennessee, there are 7 international organizations that are accepted. The international evaluation services pretty much just reviews your international education and converts it into the US credits. That way we can then use that, that education credit for you to be able to, for us to be able to complete your review based on US hours instead of the international hours, because sometimes they do differ. Tennessee does, like I said, accept 7 different ones, and then you would just have that report completed first, and then you can come in to apply for the evaluation. And this right here just kind of went over some of those steps. Let's see. So the exam content and structure. So there are 4 sections, and you have 4 hours of testing. So you have a total of 16 hours. Each section is 4 hours. Currently, there is the 18-month rule, which you must pass all exams, all 4 sections within the 18 months in order for your sections to not expire anymore. Once your sections have been passed, or I'm sorry, once you test, you must make a 75 or higher in order for it to be considered a passing grade. And then each exam section does have 5 testlets. You also will receive a 15-minute break either after each section. Testlet section, you can take one, but they do after, I think it's the 3rd one is the only one that your timer will stop. And I believe this is where Allison is picking up.
Sorry, I'm having trouble advancing. There we go.
Allison, are you available?
I know she's on, she dialed in. I'm not sure if she can hear us. I'll try to send her a message. Not sure.
I can go ahead and try to cover this. Basically, this gives you a little bit of information on how each test section works. So when you get there, you'll have 5 minutes of introductory or launch code screens that you want to make sure that you pay close attention to, because if you don't answer all the questions and get through all the slides or all of the pages, then it can time out on you and you might not qualify to complete the exam. So those welcome launch code screens are really, really important. Then you're going to go through a policy confidentiality section. And then you get into the bulk of the exam, which has 5 or 4 testlets in BEC, which is only available till the end of the year. You have a 5th testlet. And this screen just kind of shows you the various testlets. You have multiple choice questions in your first and second testlets with task-based simulations typically in your 3rd and 4th. And as Karen mentioned, your 15-minute break comes after that 3rd testlet, and that's where your timer is paused. You can take additional breaks, but the timer does not pause if you need additional break time. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. All right, Karen, do you want me to do this, or do you want to?
I can try to cover it.
Oh, I can certainly do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, first, before we move on to this section, were there any questions about applying for the exam, some specifics about exam content? Those of us on the phone don't get into the technicalities of the content, but we might be able to speak to some general questions.
I don't see any in the chat.
Okay. And we can always answer questions later too. So we'll just move forward. Okay, so now we're going to talk about CPA evolution and the licensure model changes that you all can expect to see in the 2024 exam. So hopefully all of you on the call know that we are going to see some significant changes in January. So the new licensure model is what we call a core plus disciplines model. So right now you are used to seeing 4 sections of the exam. And every individual passes those 4 sections of the exam. Under the new model, everyone's going to take 3 sections, accounting, audit, and tax, basically. And then you're going to have the option to choose a discipline section. And so you'll see that on the wheel here. In green is tax compliance and planning. Business analysis and reporting is in the blue section, and information systems and control is in the orange section there. So this is a strong core model where everyone will take those 3 sections that cover the core. It's what every CPA needs to know. And then you'll have an opportunity to take one discipline, which allows you to show more knowledge in those particular areas. And so this kind of shows the nature of practice these days. There's a lot going on out there. Almost every CPA will specialize in one area or another. Keep in mind that whatever discipline you choose does not mean you have to go practice in that area. You will eventually receive, assuming you pass all 4 sections and complete the other requirements, you will be a CPA just like any other CPA. And you won't have a specific designation based on the discipline that you choose. So it will be one CPA license that will make you equivalent to every other CPA out there. And so this is a model that was adopted by both NASBA, the AICPA, after years of working through what this should look like. And so I believe it started back in 2018 or 19, the process to get where we are today. Okay, so in general, the CPA exam is designed for a really 1 to 2 year level person in the field of accounting. There are no new education or experience requirements to sit for the exam or to become licensed under this new model. So as I mentioned, I probably should have moved on to this slide, but it's a core plus discipline model. And exam sections can be taken in any order. So if you decide you want to jump in there and take one of the disciplines right off the bat, you can certainly do that. The one caveat is that you cannot pass 2 disciplines to take the place of one of the core sections. So only one discipline, you can only pass one discipline section. Now, let's say you pass one discipline section and you receive a failing grade and you want to try a different discipline, you can certainly do that, but you can only pass one as part of your 4 sections. So there are no separate time limits to pass the core and discipline. So it's 18 months from passing the first section. And I will talk about a rule change a little bit later where we are going to move to a 30-month time frame. Candidates don't have the option to pass additional disciplines, which I mentioned, and discipline pass does not differentiate the license granted. I'm going to back up for a second, I think, if my screen will let me. So I will talk about this 18 months here quickly. So some of you may have heard that states are moving towards 30 months to pass all sections of the exam. And that is true. Many states have done that, and we have done that here in Tennessee. The board has adopted language to change the rule, but the rulemaking process can take 9 months to a year. So the rule isn't effective yet. So we are very hopeful it'll be effective before the first score release next year. But you can certainly stay up to date with that by reaching out to the board or checking our website. Okay, the exam blueprints. So this is really one of the resources that you'll want to pay close attention to when studying for the exam. And so they are a very technical document, but these are available at aicpa.org in the exam section. And what this does is it lays out the information or content that's going to be covered in each of the various sections. So probably what you're going to find on the AICPA website now is you're going to find blueprints for the current exam. You're also going to find blueprints for the new exam that's going to begin in January. And so just make sure if you go pull down one of those that you're pulling the correct one so that you're prepared. For those of you who are in the middle of taking the exam, although we are continuing with audit and audit will still exist next year, the content is shifting. So you will want to be aware of that and make sure you understand how the content that was covered on the exam this year for that section may be the same or different next year. Now, something else to note, your exam review course providers, so Becker or Gleim or whoever you choose to go through, they prepare their content based on these blueprints. And so if you get overwhelmed by looking at the blueprints, your exam providers know them very well. They've had them for over a year to prepare their study materials for you all. Okay, before I go on to that, are there any questions, Megan?
Yes, we did have one question. They asked, is there any software available to help study with task-based simulations besides doing a practice exam?
I would suggest one of the exam review providers. They're really going to be your best bet in working on specific content. The practice tests that you find on the AICPA website, if those are what you're referring to, those really don't have much at all to do with content. Those are more for you to get a feel of the look and feel of the exam for when you get there to the testing center. And so while they may use retired questions and things like that on there, I think it's fine to go through that, but it's more about making sure you're comfortable with the computer, the setup, the resources that are available to you. And so I would suggest going through a review course provider for help with that specific test-based simulations. Yes.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's not to give too much of a plug for TSCPA, but we do have discounts. We are partnered with Becker, Sargent, Gleim, Wiley, Roger, all of your major CPA exam review programs. So if you're a member, you do get discounts to those programs. And I can put a link in the chat with some of our career exam resources that are out there too. And then we just had another question come through. Would the score extension to 30 months, if you've passed exams before the core transition, will the extension apply to this as well?
Let me go through this particular slide and then I'll answer it when we get to the next couple of slides, because we're going to talk a little bit more about credit extensions.
Perfect.
Okay, so hold on to that for just a few minutes. On this screen talks about the score release schedule for next year. So I hope this is not a shock to everyone, but anytime that we launch a new exam, there are what we call score holds. So there are periods in which you cannot take or test for the exam. And that is mainly because they need to provide all of the steps involved in determining a cut score and have a legally defensible exam. And so this happens each time that there is a new exam released. And so if you look at this screen here, you're going to be able to begin testing on January 10th of 2024 under the new model. For the core test dates, you're going to be able to test January 10th through March 26th. Those score reports, if you test during that time, are not going to be available until June 4th. And so you're going to definitely have a waiting period there. And we're going to talk here in a minute about some extensions that are in place currently to assist folks with that. For the discipline test dates, you will only have 4 months in 2024 to test for a discipline. So you really want to make a plan here for when you want to do that. So the first window for testing for a discipline is going to be January 10th through February 6th. And then those reports are going to be available, or the score release is going to be on April 24th. And so I won't read through the whole chart there, but these, my understanding is these dates are subject to change. However, the first couple of quarters are pretty set. I don't think there's an expectation that those will change, but I suppose there could be a day or two there that may change. So you want to keep an eye on those. The official score release dates can always be found on the AICPA website. And so if you Google score release AICPA, you're going to find that for the current year and for the next year listed there. So best when you're planning to keep this in mind. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about credit period by jurisdiction. So we talked about the current 18 months and then the vote to go to 30 months. So the jurisdictions in blue have not voted yet, and this is as of October 13th. So there may be some changes in the past month that aren't on this screen, but this gives you a glimpse anyway. All of the states listed in gold have voted to go to 30 months, but they have to go through some sort of rulemaking in order to make that effective, which I mentioned a few slides ago. And then there are a few states that were able to implement very quickly. So Utah, Mississippi, Puerto Rico, and New Jersey were able to move quickly, and the 30 months is already effective there. So in Tennessee, whenever we determine the effective date, which we will not know until the Attorney General's office has filed the rules with the Secretary of State. And once that happens, the effective date is 90 days from that particular date. So as you can imagine, we don't have a lot of control over that. But once that date is determined, then anyone who has credit on the effective date, active credit, will receive 30 months on their score. So if let's say that your credit, let's say the effective date just is April 1st for lack of knowing when that's going to be. Let's say it's April 1st of 2024. If you have active credit on that day, then your credit will now have 30 months attached to it. So that's how that works. If your credit expires, let's say tomorrow, then you are not going to automatically get the 30 months attached to your score. It will expire, as the current rule is 18 months. Now, if you have some sort of extenuating circumstance that you would like to apply for an extension on that credit, you can apply through the board by making that request and providing you do have to have supporting documentation for your reason. It's typically extenuating circumstances, a natural disaster, a long time illness. It could be a variety of issues that are circumstances beyond your control, is the way it's outlined in the rule. So you can do that. Now, the board has also authorized, and I know this gets confusing, so if you all have questions, we'll do those in just a minute, but they've also adopted what we call the Credit Relief Initiative, which I don't think we have a slide on that, but that's because many states are not adopting, some are, but Tennessee has adopted the Credit Relief Initiative. And this affects, it's mainly related to the pandemic. So if you had a credit that expired between January 30th of 2020 and May 11th of this year, then you would be eligible for credit relief on those particular scores. An email went out to those individuals yesterday that we believe are affected or have one or more scores that would fall into that category. And we are responding to those as we can. So it may take a couple of days for us to respond to those. So I'll pause for a minute and see if that answers questions on credit extensions, credit relief, and I'm happy to address questions.
I just had a question come through. Is the Credit Relief Initiative only for extreme scenarios, or would you encourage everyone to fill out a form that lost credit during that time frame?
So it has been determined that that is going to be, no documentation is required for that particular program. And so I would encourage anyone that had some type of extenuating circumstance during that time that falls in one of the categories on the form to please submit it. You do not have to provide documentation. You only have to attest to the issue that you believe affected you during that time.
I don't see any other questions right now.
Okay. Okay, and this is the last on credit extension. So I've talked about basically two initiatives. The rule changed to 30 months, and then I've also talked about the Credit Relief Initiative. Now, this particular policy was adopted almost a year ago, and this was in anticipation of the move to the new exam. And so anyone that has credit, active credit on January 1st of 24 is going to automatically receive an extension until June 30 of 25. So that's 18 months. It seems like a long time, but the reason for it is because of the slide I showed you with all of the score holds. So it's an effort to give people additional time to make up for having to wait a few months for a score release rather than a few weeks, which is what you, the process that you are currently experiencing. And so all but one state has adopted this. Actually, Oklahoma has adopted it as well, but they have to go through a rule change to make it effective. So all of the other states, that is ready to go. If you have active credit January 1st in Tennessee, you do not need to take any action. NASBA will update your scores sometime in January, is my understanding. So before I move on to exam strategy or any additional questions on scoring, credit relief, those types of things?
Don't have anything in the chat.
Okay. All right, this is just to kind of highlight the importance of exam strategy. You know, many people go in and they rush in to sit for the exam, and maybe they're not totally prepared and then get defeated when they get a failing grade, which, keep in mind, it happens to most people. So the pass rate on the exam is between 50 and 60% at best. And so it is part of the process for many folks. But one of the ways to help with that is to have an exam strategy, understand the requirements to take the exam. We'll talk about in just a minute some of about the candidate bulletin, which I think I'll let Karen or Allison talk about. But learn about the exam, what it tests on. Those blueprints are a good resource, as well as any exam review course provider. Manage your time wisely. Make sure that you have enough time to study before you actually apply for and get an NTS for a section. Form a support group. You know, maybe you find a couple of other people either at your employer that are going through this at the same time. It helps sometimes to have a group that you're working together with. And then again, any exam partner is here to kind of help you through the journey, whether it be TSCPA or the board or NASBA. We can certainly put you in touch with resources that may be helpful for you. All right. Karen or Allison, were you all, either one of you want to take this part of it?
I think Allison's is mute. Is not, I think her call is not letting her unmute.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
I can read over the notes that's on it. Let me see.
It's okay. I can probably, I've done it before, so I can go through it. But y'all jump in if you have anything to add, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I add one thing? Allison did send me a message and said you may want to share that anyone is granted an extension. If anyone is granted an extension and a score is reinstated, NASBA is giving refunds to those that paid for their notice to sit or a new notice to sit, but have not sat yet.
Okay, that's great, Megan. I think it's a really good point. So if Allison can at some point let you know who they would reach out to, whether it's the CPA, TN, or where they would reach out to request that refund, that'd be great.
Yes, she just sent an email address, so I put that in the chat, and that's who you would reach out to for that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Allison. All right, so practice with sample tests. And so I think we kind of referred to this earlier, but these tests that are available on the AICPA's website have the real software that you're going to see when you get to the Prometric Test Center. It'll get you used to the interface. It'll show you your dedicated workspace, how to work with, I believe when you start under the new exam, The Excel resource is going to be a different type of resource. Cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head. If either of you all do, you can chat me. It's like .js or something like that. But these practice tests will help you with those resources and make sure you're comfortable with them before going into the testing environment. So make sure you take advantage of those. Of course, there's multiple choice questions, task-based simulations with correct answers and explanations that can help you out there as well. Oh, did I just go? Okay. So this is what a screen is going to look like in the testing environment. And so again, those sample tests will give you a sense of what that will look like for you. You see the tabs at the top for your various testlets, your resources, your calculator, your Excel, or the new resource for Excel, your authoritative literature, how you would get there, maybe even how to search it. And so this is just kind of to make you more prepared when you go in for the exam. Okay, so this is the CPA exam candidate guide. Sorry, that's a little blurry there. I'm not sure, this is produced by NASBA. Correct? Am I correct on that, Karen?
Yes, so the candidate bulletin is pretty much just a guide of the steps, pretty much like what we went over today. It gives them details on links within our website. It tells them what, it talks about the examination partners, and it gives a list of all the states. Preparing for the exam, it gives you a couple tips there. Applying for the exam. It even gives you details regarding like your notice to schedule. If you have any international testing fees, it gives you information on that and what states accept international testing. So it gives a lot of details, and it is very, we like to push that on the candidates to make sure that they kind of go over that because it is very informative. It is provided through our website. If you go to nasba.org and then you select the exams, it's provided there, and it's also provided once you select the actual state under the exams part of our website. But it is very helpful. It gives a lot of information, not just the NASBA part, but it gives information, like I said, about NTS, some information on Prometric, and AI-CPA with the score release.
Is it fair to say that they're responsible for understanding the content in there, meaning they have to attest that they understand it so that, if, for example, you show up at the testing center without your ID to match your NTS and they turn you away, that was covered in the candidate guide. And so you are responsible for knowing that.
Yeah, so I believe that's one of the questions that's on the application when they first apply for the evaluation part.
Okay.
Where we're telling them about the candidate bulletin to make sure that they've read over it and understand it. And that is information that is in that bulletin that we have. So yeah, it does fall on the candidate's responsibility to make sure that they're aware of that and have the correct information when they go to the test centers.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is just, I think, further information from NASBA. This is nasba.org CPA/CPA exam. And this is where you apply to the exam, where you get information, where you learn how to, when your scores are going to be available, how to access them and that type of thing. And so I don't know, Karen, or if you have anything to add there on what's available to the candidate there.
So on our website, we have, like, you see this link here, it says CPA exam. It does give you the breakdown of just the exam, like education requirements, and it gives you breakdown on the fees and materials that are required for each state. For Tennessee specifically, it's on there as well. Once they go to that, there is also a link that takes you to the application page. But everything you need to know is on our website, specifically this page. And then I know that there with Tennessee, we also do the education requirements for the licensure. There's also a page on our website, NASBA.org/licensure. And that one can also be found directly here. If you can see it at the top right corner, they can just click that and see the education requirements for the Tennessee's licensure part. They're slightly different, so it is on separate pages because, you know, we do provide the exam first. That is the main one that's on this link, but it gives all the information there: fees, documents, and education.
I actually have a question that we get sometimes.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure I know the answer. So let's say that I passed the exam yesterday and I qualified with only 18 hours, and I need to have the rest of my education evaluated. How do I go about providing you the additional transcripts? Do I need to apply again? Do I just log in and upload, have those sent over? What's that process look like?
So that is where they would go to the licensure section of the NASBA page, at the top right corner where it says licensure. They'll click that and they're going to apply for what we call the ACE application, which is the academic credential evaluation. So for any candidates who did not meet the state's 150-hour requirement, they'll go here and apply for that. They send in updated transcripts or all of their transcripts, depending on how far back they originally applied for the exam. Through this application, we will do the licensure, the additional review for the licensure education requirements. So it is a different application. It is a different fee, but this is required for anyone who did not meet that licensure education requirement up front for the exam. And that, like I said, all that information, if you look at this page you have up at the top of the, where it says Member Center, Exams and Licensure, they would click on Licensure and then go down to NASBA Licensing and then select Tennessee.
Okay, great. This is another resource that if you all are not familiar with, this is actually on Facebook. There is a CPA exam candidate forum. And even if you're not a regular Facebook user, there's a lot of activity in this particular forum. And so, and folks share information quite often there. So if you're not a member of that group, it may be something that you wish to consider. You can, of course, see what other folks are saying, and you can also post questions yourself. I would suggest that if you have a very specific question about, requirements, that it's always best to reach out to the board because you may not get accurate information in the forum. So you could start there, but if you want to verify, come to us at the board and we'll make sure you get the right answer. And I think that is what we had prepared for you all today, but I'm happy to answer more questions. I'm happy to, if y'all want to talk and you want to come off mute, happy. It's a fairly small group, so I'm happy to.